you set up something in the beginning. Let's say you have the object right here, and it's a gun, right? When you see this object, it shows the audience that this will be later be used for something else. Now, in D&D, storytelling is quite different because it is a cooperative thing, and the story that you make with as a DM with you and your players affects this a lot. So, here's a good example. Well, not an example. I'm just basically. Usually, characters have backgrounds, and backgrounds, although they are important for a character, does not necessarily develop the story the same way setup does. So, for example, I could talk about how in D&D, a character like a barbarian could have the outlander background, but that doesn't. The thing about that is that doesn't necessarily progress the story in different ways. That's just how he's set in stone as a character. Why he is like that as a character. While the gun, which can be represented by an object or something that someone holds, or even something like a vision, a flashback, that's supposed to be something that's going to be used up for later. Now, the thing about role-playing is that players and DMs sometimes forget about these things. I had a recent campaign where my players, my players wanted to have one of my players wanted to exit their character. And I allowed to do so because, even out of great frustration, because I had a lot of... The thing about their character was that I set it up a lot throughout the journey. And because they wanted to get rid of it, all of that setup was thrown away like that. And sometimes setting up a lot of things for your character for it just to be thrown away, it betrays the trust of both the DM and the player. Because then you can't trust the player with anything anymore if they're going to throw the setups that they're given for your character. A good way of talking about this is, let's say a character finds a magical item, but he thinks it's evil, right? Now, the thing about it is that a thing that a character would do is that he would get it and then give it to someone else, and maybe this someone else would be like, "Oh, it's a powerful object. Are you sure about this?" And you gotta find a safe place for other people to not get it. So maybe you get someone to make like a dungeon for it, so that no one gets these items. That's one way to develop this and have the item be used for something else later. But if your players, for example, take away or no, I'll store it for something later. Well, they're not really storing it for later. The thing they're gonna do is keep it around. And they're gonna keep it. And then they're gonna keep it. And then the story of that item is never gonna be told. Now, to be fair, the character isn't going to be negatively affected by this whatsoever, because this is never going to get into the contact of anyone else. and even not the character himself unless he dies and someone picks up his stuff, which is unlikely because he's a PC. PCs usually don't die in D&D. In other games, maybe, but in D&D, it's only low level where you can get players to do stupid stuff and get them killed really easily. But besides that, it's hard to get characters under the pressure. So, what do you do about this? Well, I would suggest that for some things, you would need to talk to the players about it, and be like, and let them understand that what a character would do. So I might have I've been having a lot of trouble with this as DM because I like setup in a lot of stuff. I like setup in a lot of stuff because it means that later on the players will appreciate me putting that there. And if they don't use it, then that's it erodes the story that I create with the player characters. Even though that is supposed to be a cooperative experience, the player should, I feel, should, when given like an object or something like that, use the object, or use it in a different way than what you the person would do, which is like store it yourself in like a small container. And I have as a someone who's been thinking about this, developed ways that you could actually make the gun go to that later without the player's permission. Now you might be asking, well, how would you do this? Well, let's say the object was evil, right? And you want it to be used later, right? Well, the object doesn't really have to, do anything by itself. And one thing you can do is you can make the object a beacon for other strong enemies to come to the players. Now, the problem with this that I've thought about is that players could just kill the monsters and they wouldn't really be worried about them. Now, maybe that might not be true if you put it in like a really strong monster, but then they'll start developing plans for how to kill a monster, and you won't necessarily have this thing be ever used. However, they were told that this thing, it kept getting out of their grasp and stuff like that, and in the hands of other people by its own will, aka like disappearing. Well, not disappearing, but like moving slightly whenever they're not looking, stuff like that. That will get them, will get them really crazy about it, and they'll be really worried about not watching it, and they'll have to like spend their time watching it, and a lot of mischief can be used about this. The thing about this is that this type of problem doesn't exactly arise in modules. The reason why it doesn't exactly arise in modules is that you as DM already know the setup, and your players can't exactly change something that's either supposed to happen or it is supposed to happen. So let's say that all the players are supposed to be at this one event because it is important. How do you do that? Well, like I said, so, well, I think this is, I pretty much concluded most of what I think about setup in D&D. It is hard with your home campaigns, like excessively hard, and a lot of players will. Well, yeah, a lot of players will not notice the events stuff like that, because like they don't necessarily know, and if they didn't know, then it would ruin the surprise, and that it would ruin the surprise, and that it wouldn't be much of a fun roleplay experience if everybody was like, okay, then what would we do at? It's basically, it would be like 4 people writing a script. It wouldn't really be a role-playing experience like D&D is supposed to be. But you could balance this out by just making the object more irritating in a way that they would want to destroy it, or make it do will checks and stuff like that. Yeah. This will conclude the episode of writing, and Lord, this will conclude the episode of writing, and this will conclude the episode of writing and role playing.